Federal transportation officials announced this week that they will launch an investigation into the construction of the controversial expansion of I-70. A civil rights complaint has been filed citing adverse impacts on health, economics, and quality of life of the surrounding neighbors. According to the Colorado Department of Transportation, the project planning will begin and continue, and work is set to begin in 2018. David, how big of a deal is this?
I think not, although we'll see what the feds come up with in their investigation. I think it is accurate to say that when you do major highway expansions within a developed urban area like here, it does have adverse impacts on health, economics, and quality of life of the surrounding neighbors. That's true everywhere. Now, and they're doing this expansion in the place where any rational transportation manager would say an expansion is needed. So do you have a civil rights violation because it's happening there when these kind of impacts happen everywhere this is done? I'm skeptical that that'll be proven, but if the feds investigate and find out that secretly they were saying, well, it'd be really smarter to do the expansion out, by Kiowa, but we're going to do it here because we can harm people based on their race, then that would, we'll find out if that was the motive or not.
Eric, do you think CDOT's in for a fight, especially how they've gone about this process so far?
Well, yes, they're in for a fight, but it's probably not an unanticipated fight. I mean, the notion that a lawsuit got filed over a major infrastructure project is not exactly top of the breaking news kind of stories. Lawsuits are filed over everything. I take this into a more macro sense with Donald Trump, President-elect Trump, getting ready to launch, at least by most reports, a major thrust to improve this country's infrastructure. And one of the real problems he will face, as anyone faces, is just the regulatory notion and the amount of litigation that accompanies any attempt to really build anything in this country. I'm not suggesting that the residents of those neighborhoods don't have some valid concerns. But there's also been substantial mitigation that has taken place. We used to have a phrase of NIMBY, not in my backyard. There's a new phrase that I've been attracted to. It's called BANANA. The acronym is build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. And I think there are some interests out there. I'm not accusing the Swansea Globeville interests necessarily being in that camp. But we see around the country, whether it's around pipelines or anything else, there are banana interests who just do not want to build or improve this country's infrastructure if it has any adverse effect at all, and it's always going to have some adverse effect on someone.
Penn, the neighborhoods in question have been predominantly Latino for a long time. They've been poor for generations. Is there something special about this particular expansion in those neighborhoods, and really the history that those neighborhoods have been treated? Because it's not exactly the first expansion of I-70 there didn't go their way either. So is there something to the particular history in that neighborhood that will affect this case?
I don't know. And let me start by disclosing that my law firm is the firm that does the financings for CDOT and will do the financing on this project. And I just have to answer, I don't know. What is clear is CDOT has spent 7, 8, 9 years researching this issue, meeting with the neighborhoods. I know the current plan is not necessarily what was originally proposed in part to address the concerns of some of the neighborhoods. And I know the city has stepped up and put some enhancements in this project to try to address the neighborhood concerns. But we also know the neighborhood has the right to say, hey, we feel aggrieved, we're going to raise an issue. And so that's why the feds are coming in and take a look at it. So we'll see what happens. But there's been considerable study here. Eric is right about that. We'll see how it shakes out.
Patty, it seems CDOT did some work to get out ahead of the project, but not a whole lot in the neighborhood. And little issues have come up that try to chip away at that. You have a whole issue with City Park, the golf course now needing to be completely changed over because of flood planning. You have this lawsuit. Do you think there's enough momentum building up from all these smaller issues that would slow anything down with this expansion?
Well, it already is slowed down. The EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement, was supposed to be released. It was going to be finalized this summer. It was pushed back. Should be coming soon, but it hasn't. CDOT had postponed that. You've got some momentum building with the ditch people who don't want to have, they don't want I-70 there at all. The compromise was the little ditch and the overlay park. And it seems to be getting some momentum. One of the issues, of course, is that highway went through this area that was always a poor area. It started out Eastern European immigrants. It's gone through a lot of different groups. When the highway went through, I think it was probably still largely poor white in that era. But what people seem to miss is if that highway is rerouted, and let's face it, Commerce City doesn't want it either, so I think Kiowa might be the solution. That doesn't mean that Globeville and Elryia-Swansea will be reunited. What it means probably is the developers that are building those monstrosities in Rhino will just move over and do the same thing there.